brutal. Because when I spoke with the survivors, you met only 2 of them today. We meet with others. And you can't understand absolutely why they are doing this. Maybe just because they want to destroy Ukraine as a country and as a nation. Maybe they have been told that people in Ukraine are waiting for them. And when they understand that this is not the true, they start to kill, they start to torture, they start to do, I mean, bombing this theater. And this was a bomb you mentioned even from satellite, but this was bombing on a very low height, so that the pilot of this aircraft could see by his eyes that it's children, дети, and in Russian and in Ukrainian. So I heard, I suppose it was even written in Russian, дети, yes, by Russian letters. Yeah, so for me it's very difficult to understand why are they behaving like this. The only possible explanation is that they just want to erase Ukraine and Ukrainians from the land, because they're the same patterns, the same conduct which we all saw in first months of war in Kiev region, in Bucha, Irpin, and others. And this was world known. And when we saw the same after liberation in Kharkiv region in September, and we saw the same cases, May, June, July, August, September, and then Kherson, November, and then our brave and courageous survivor today, this crime was committed against her January this year, because she was still on the occupied territory of Kherson region at that time. So 1 year, same conduct. Even if they know that these war crimes were committed by their servicemen, by their people before, they proceed to do it, even knowing that all the world is condemning such brutal behavior. So maybe because they really want to kill all of us.
It's just heartbreaking to hear this. Thank you so much. Thanks for
Thank
being here. I know we went way over our time. I yield back.
But it was well worth it. Chair now recognizes Ms. Sarah Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Prosecutor General. Thank you for being here and testifying, and thank you to you and your team for all your hard work. I know it's not easy to hear these stories day in and day out and to see all of this evidence, so we really do want to say thank you for everything that you and your team are doing, and please take that back to them. As all my colleagues have said, the war crimes we've heard about today and that we've read about in the news are horrifying and gut-wrenching. And, you know, we know there have already been over 22,000 civilian casualties and about 17.6 Ukrainians who are in need of humanitarian assistance. And we know that the war is still going on. And as everyone here has said today, accountability and justice is so incredibly important. That's why I'm supportive of the ICC investigation into the war crimes that are happening. And actually, last Congress, I introduced and was able to get legislation passed that allows the U.S. to provide support to that ICC investigation. But we know that support hasn't happened yet. And I was wondering if you could talk to the importance of the ICC investigation and why international support, and especially U.S. support, is so important.
Thank you for this question. You know, once again, when I met first time with Karim Khan, it was just few weeks upon my appointment. It was in August or beginning of September. And when we talk about our cooperation, I understand that he is very committed. I understand that his team is very strong. And when we started to also to prioritize the cases, and when we choose this case of deportation of children as a matter of priority, but there are many others, we understand that we will have the result we have at the moment. First in history, the incumbent president of permanent member of Security Council is named as alleged war criminal. I understand how is important this support, because the level of attention, the level of awareness to war crimes which are prosecuted by the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court is much higher than what for some cases which are prosecuted by us on the national level. I already mentioned the complementarity role of the ICC, but we discussed this with Karim, and I'm ready even to transfer the cases to the ICC, which we can finalize internally, because there are cases about war crimes which are world known, and the survivors of these cases are, from my point of view, should receive their matter of justice even on international level. And we will fully cooperate with the team of Karim Khan. We even declared, or publicly announced, that we create task forces for specific war crimes which could be later transferred to the ICC. So in this respect, full support to all endeavors of the ICC. Please know that if you support the ICC, you're supporting us.
Thank you, and I hope that those who are standing in the way of that assistance getting transferred hear what you have to say today. Really quickly, given the numerous organizations and actors currently documenting atrocities, how is your office preserving the chain of evidence and ensuring the documentation is viable? What more can the U.S. do to help you with that process, and also to help make sure that the survivors and potential witnesses are getting everything they need to be able to provide the kind of testimony you need?
First of all, once again, we need IT solutions in order to not to lose any piece of electronic evidence, digital evidence we have. This is now one of the most strategic issues I'm dealing with. With regard to witnesses, victims, and survivors, of course, we have changed approach to prosecution, for instance, of conflict-related sexual violence crimes. I have changed the strategy of investigation of these crimes. All our work now is survivor-centered. We use the principles of the Murad Code, and we train internationally, also train our investigators and prosecutors how to communicate with the survivors of sexual violence. This is one of the matter of my priorities, and I just go ahead. The issue is that the survivors from vulnerable groups, they need much more care and treatment, not only protection on and their support for the matter of justice for them, but also as a matter of their care for psychological support, financial even support. We are dealing with these cases in Ukraine, and usually we have support from NGOs and from also state institutions. Some of these projects are supported by the First Lady, who is personally dealing with shelters for the victims and survivors of the sexual violence crimes. So we have a system, but even if in some case we will need, and we will think that it will be important for these victims and survivors to feel even safer than they are, maybe transferring them to the other countries would be a proper help for them.
Got you. Well, thank you again for all of your work, and Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
General yields back. Chair recognizes Ms. Kathy Manning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the brave victims for sharing their heartbreaking stories, and I want to thank you, Prosecutor General Costin, for the extraordinary work that you're doing. Yesterday, people around the world observed Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Memorial Day, a day to remember and honor the victims of the most well-organized, efficient, and effective genocide in history, and to repeat the vow, never again. And yet we sit here today and hear about horrific atrocities that are being inflicted on innocent people, on children, by another tyrant, and ordinary men who have become monsters under his direction. We cannot sit idly by. We must reiterate the vow never again, and we must make sure the world knows about these ungodly atrocities, and we must hold the perpetrators accountable. Mr. Costin, thank you for the difficult work you are doing to try to hold these people accountable. We know that the ICC has indicted Vladimir Putin, as well as Maria Lvova-Belova, Russia's Commissioner for Children's Rights, for overseeing the horrific abduction and forced adoption of hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian children. It is unthinkable. As a mother, I can barely stand to hear what has been going on. So, which other leading Russian military officials or others do you think should be included on this list?
Thank you for your words of support, and thank you for your question. We are investigating cases against many Russian officials of all of the levels. And of course, we are not only investigating and prosecuting cases related to deportation of children together in coordination with the ICC. There are a lot of other cases. I can't tell you at the moment the names, but for some cases we already reached the commanders of very high level who orchestrated the atrocities committed in Kyiv region, cities like Bucha, who orchestrated and who commanded the missile attacks against civil buildings, multi-storied residential buildings, which caused more than 100 civilians killed in 3 cases. Because we found that these 3 attacks, which were held in Dnipro, the Vinnytsia, Sergeyevka, which is near Odessa, and the M-Store Mall in Kremenchuk, where people were inside the mall at that time, they used the very quite rare type of missile, which is in possession of only one military unit in Russia. And we informed on suspicion the commander of this unit of very high level. So we are going ahead and we are moving. And in this respect, in order to establish the command chain, we extremely need more intelligence information to be used for our cases.
Thank you. And we think it's important that everyone who has been part of committing these atrocities be held accountable. Following orders should not be an excuse, and we need to make sure that all of these people are held accountable, and thank you for your work in pursuing that. Mr. Costin, last June, Attorney General Merrick Garland appointed Eli Rosenbaum, who is well known for tracking down and prosecuting World War II Nazi cases, as head of the new DOJ War Crimes Accountability Team in Ukraine. Can you talk about his cooperation with your office and whether there is precedent for prosecuting those responsible for Russia's unprovoked invasion for the crime of aggression?
I'm really grateful for Eli and his team for work they're doing. I would say that my colleagues are in daily contact with Eli and his team. And the experienced professionals from Eli team not only help us with advice, we are also dealing with specific investigation of specific war crimes, not only in relation to Ukrainians, but also against the citizens of the United States. So we are in very close cooperation, and I'm really grateful for Eli and his team for this level of support.
Thank you again for all of your extraordinary hard work. We are so appreciative. My time has expired. I yield back.
Julie yields back. Chair recognizes Mr. Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your time. I know it's been a very long day. I would like to just kind of ask a few things, if I may, which is, would a decision by the United States to designate the Wagner Group a foreign terrorist organization assist your efforts to hold accountable its members who have committed atrocities in Ukraine and support your efforts?
I think I fully support this idea. I have already mentioned this in my address. I think it's not only about holding them accountable for war crimes committed, it's also about to prevent the other potential war crimes which could be committed not only in Ukraine but worldwide. This designation of Wagner Group as an international terrorist organization could help all of us to stop the activity of this organization, which raise a lot of risks not only to Ukraine but also to many other countries of the civilized world. You know that they are not only in Africa, they're not only in Asia, they're now in Caribbean, and I know that I believe that response should be unified. For us, it will be extremely helpful because the consequences will mean that they will have more difficulties in financing their operations in Ukraine, and it will save lives of our people.
That's exactly right. And as you mentioned, they're not just in Ukraine, and they have started to get a foothold in Caribbean, and especially there in Haiti, which is very close to the American borders that we need to be considering. And I do look at them very much in the same way that I look at the IRGC or the Quds Force, who is being utilized as proxy militias across the nation to not only look at trying to build up foreign internal strategies to fight against Americans or to fight against those of that nation, but really to be a mercenary group who is there to do nothing but terrorize and murder. So I appreciate your answer very much, and I hope that we can support in that effort. During the past year, more than 33 verdicts were issued for high-level corruption, in addition to hundreds of investigations and dozens of indictments. What kind of progress has Ukraine made in implementing the rule of law reforms set forth by the EU last June as preconditions for negotiations, and has your fight against corruption advanced the rule of law in furthering these conditions?
Thank you for your question. Of course, we have priorities during wartime. And the priorities of my office, of course, are investigation and prosecution of war crimes, fighting against collaborators and traitors, and fight against corruption. In my inaugural speech before the parliament last June, I pointed out that Ukraine has two enemies: external, Russia and its proxies and its collaborators, and internal corruption. And we need to win both fights. Immediate upon my appointment as a prosecutor general, I appointed the chair of Specialized Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office. What we have during last months, we have appointed new director of National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine after successful open selection process. The High Anti-Corruption Court has elected their president. They were trying to do it within last year. They are independent. They needed to elect. So we have all three bodies equipped with their chairs. Excellent. In March this year, Greco, as an organization of the Council of Europe, has excluded Ukraine from the blacklist of countries which are not fighting against corruption for our joint efforts combating corruption in high-level officials, including members of the parliament, judges, and prosecutors.
Well, I really appreciate that you're paying such close attention when it comes to the prosecution and the continued investigations into the corruption that is going on in Ukraine. I want to follow up with this, noting that one of your predecessors, the prosecutor general, was removed when he was investigating a company that is well known called Burisma. will you be looking into opening that investigation again and ensuring that any type of corruption that Burisma was involved in, that it would be adequately processed, reviewed, and if need be prosecuted with reports back to the United States if there was any of our personnel who were involved?
I have already answered this question during this hearing. This is not a topic of our discussion, and I have already answered your question about our fight against corruption, and I can give you more examples. But our hearings are related to war crimes, and I will concentrate my answers on this topic, if you allow.
With that, I yield back.